Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to get the ball rolling on the upcoming Labour leadership contest. This will be the contest that aims to choose our next Prime Minister, but how realistic that aim is depends entirely on who is selected and how well the different factions of the Labour Party work together towards that aim. But first, if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, now that the dust has settled a little on Jeremy Corbyn's announcement of resigning as Labour leader at some unspecified point in the future, it's time to look at the people putting themselves forward for the role and the difficulty that those in the party face depending on who you want to see in charge. Now, the key contenders briefly are, so the first two, first of all, Rebecca Long-Bailey, who is the Corbyn continuity candidate. That's appealing to some people in the Labour Party and the worst possible option for those of us who are not. She is the preferred candidate for the Momentum Group, which is an organisation within the Labour Party whose sole aim was to keep Corbyn in charge, and in fact still is. Sir Keir Starmer has been a member of Corbyn's shadow cabinet. He has shown himself to be reasonably effective in debates. He's intelligent, has a track record of very long left-wing policies going back a long time ago. But he also understands the need to bring everyone on the left together in order to appeal to the electorate. As such, you would think he'd be the ideal pick because he would promote the policies that Corbyn championed. He's fully on board with them, but he would do so in a credible way. But he's not. And before I move on to the other candidates, it's worth considering the situation that we face in the Labour Party. So Keir Starmer and Rebecca Long-Bailey, they highlight the problems for Labour because Rebecca Long-Bailey is, as I say, the Corbynista's preferred candidate. But she is way down the list in terms of polling amongst the general electorate. That was the problem with Jeremy Corbyn, and they're seeking to replace that with exactly the same scenario. She's also, that's the general electorate. Not all of the general electorate would ever vote Labour. Even when that poll moved on to people who would identify as Labour voters, she is still pretty much at the bottom. So Keir Starmer leads the way for both polls, which demonstrates a credibility amongst the public, amongst the voting public especially, which can't be ignored. But in other words, what I'd be saying here is the Corbynists have a golden opportunity to get a candidate who will support key left-wing policies, but also appeal to the general public and inspire Labour voters in a way that Corbyn, face facts, turned away. And yet they're going for Long-Bailey, or Momentum is. We don't know as yet what the general Corbynista population of the Labour membership will, but they are likely to be heavily influenced by Momentum. And make no mistake, she will actually be worse than Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn was too easily influenced by not only, the politics of decades ago, but also those around him who were not at all competent to run a campaign. But he was a force in his own right. He was his own person. He'd earned a following from his decades of experience as a Labour MP, a Labour activist. Not so much with Rebecca Long-Bailey. She is not her own person in the eyes of most members of the Labour Party. She's not her own person because she never distinguished herself. She was always Corbyn's mouthpiece. And not only would the media paint her as Corbyn's puppet and say that Jeremy Corbyn is still in charge of the party and she's just the public face, it'll actually be sort of true. Now, I say sort of true because I don't think it'll really be Jeremy Corbyn in charge, but the chief Corbynistas. She will have no personality of her own. She won't be allowed one. She is the pick specifically because she will do as she is told. And again, do as she's told by the very people who led Labour to its crushing defeat a couple of weeks ago. And that is why there's a campaign at the moment to get people to join the Labour Party. People joining now will be allowed to vote in the leadership contest. In fact, joining up to at least halfway through January and probably a little bit later will guarantee the right to a vote. Of course, we don't yet know who's going to be chosen for the membership to vote on, but it is essential that those who learned no lessons at all from the past 4 years do not determine what Labour does next. they have delivered a truly awful Conservative government, albeit unwittingly, but that lack of wit is not going to overcome the Conservative government if it's allowed free rein now. And so we need to overcome it with a continuing surge in new or returning Labour members. Tens of thousands have already joined since the election with this in mind, and we need to continue that and to get more and more over the next few weeks. Other candidates for the leadership election, let's go through the notable ones because there's quite a lot sort of thrown their hat into the ring. But Yvette Cooper is a fairly notable one. She is sort of my pick as a continuity candidate. Now, she's not my preferred candidate as Labour leader in isolation as such, but for the here and now, she'd be very, very good at rebuilding. She has the experience to know how things work in the party and therefore not be led astray by those who don't have the best interests or the best brains for the party. She's proven herself effective in bridge building in Parliament. She's very good at attacking the government, and she would absolutely tear Johnson a new arsehole in Prime Minister's questions. The downside is that she would not be at all welcomed by Momentum or the Corbynistas in general. Momentum would trigger a civil war over this. I think they will anyway if they don't get their pick, and if they do get their pick, well, then it's still civil war. So from the point of view of healing the party, she wouldn't be the ideal candidate for that. But at the end of the day, if healing can't happen right now anyway, she'd be my pick. If it is possible for there to be a candidate who can heal, well, I would get behind Sir Keir Starmer as my next option. Another candidate is Jess Phillips. Now, she has made her name for herself with fiery speeches and attacks on the use of hate speech by politicians. She's definitely a conviction politician. She wouldn't sell herself out. I absolutely believe that. But although I'd like to see her play an active role on the front bench for Labour, I don't think she as yet has the experience in the party to be effective in a leadership where the party is going to be at war with itself. She is popular amongst the public. She has got herself a decent public profile. And if she were to be elected, I wouldn't despair. I wouldn't go, oh my God, that's 2024 gone. But I would have to wait and see how she handles herself because I just worry about the lack of experience. But again, it depends on who she decides she trusts to advise her. You know, if she trusts people who have got the party's best interest and do have the experience, you know, then maybe. Emily Thornberry, another candidate, has stood, but I can't see her making it to the final ballot. She's quite a divisive figure in her own right and is currently suing a former Labour MP for libel. Now, that's not necessarily a reflection on Thornberry. It might well be that she genuinely has been libelled and therefore the action is justified. But it's not a good look for the Labour leader to be suing prominent Labour members. So I don't think she would have had much chance anyway, but this sort of thing is the sort of thing you don't want to be electing a leader that's in this sort of situation. Clive Lewis, I think, is a decent man, a decent MP. But again, I think he lacks enough backing in the party to get very far. And he doesn't have a high public profile, reflected again in the polls by not a lot of support for him, probably because most people don't really know who he is. But he is someone I'd like to see in the shadow cabinet getting more experience because I think for the future he could be a big hitter. We'll see. Angela Rayner is again a notable candidate. Again, someone who over time could develop into being a big hitter. But within the party and the people who would really know a lot about her, she's not anyone's preferred candidate. She could be a compromise candidate to a certain extent, not as effective as Sir Keir Starmer. But she doesn't have the public profile as yet. It's building, but it's not quite there. And within the party, as I say, she's not really any faction's preferred candidate. Now, in terms of how the contest will go, it works on a very similar basis to the Conservative leadership election that happened last year that elected Boris Johnson. MPs nominate. You will then have a series of votes in the Parliamentary Labour Party until it's whittled down to 2 candidates. And then those 2 candidates go on a ballot paper that's mailed out to us members of the Labour Party. We vote on our preferred candidate, mail it off. Now, out of the candidates that I've discussed, as I say, the only ones, never mind my preferred ones, the only ones that I see being able to do anything at all to move Labour on, whether it's move them on rapidly or just move them on, would be Sir Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, Jess Phillips, Clive Lewis. They're the only ones who I see really having any sort of plan to do so. Now, if 2 of those 4 made it onto the final ballot, I think I would breathe a sigh of relief that at least we will get some movement forward, but there are ones that I would prefer to see than others. I think I made that clear. It will be possible for this to occur as well for 2 of those 4, because the Parliamentary Labour Party are sick to the back teeth of the position they find themselves in. Absolutely sick in their stomachs to see what has happened in this general election. And it is entirely within their power to ensure that the likes of Rebecca Long-Bailey do not make it onto the final ballot. But that being said, even if she does, a suitable alternative to her could still be favourite going out to the membership if we get more people joining Labour, and if many of the people who supported what Jeremy Corbyn wanted to do recognise the failures and support the candidate who is not going to continue that failure. So all hope is not lost, even if she does make it onto the final ballot. I don't want to make it sound like she would be a shoo-in if the membership at large were to choose, because it's not a shoo-in. And as I say, we're hoping to increase the number of members anyway. And by all accounts, the majority of the people who are joining right now tend to be the Remain supporters who couldn't feel they didn't feel they wanted to join Labour while Corbyn was in charge, but they would like to shape the future of, let's face facts, the only opposition the Conservatives can possibly face. So hopefully that explains a few things. I will continue this as and when new things emerge over the next few months. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for further details. And until next time, I'll see you later.